There were many reasons to explore the galaxy, from finding rare natural resources to exploit, to surveying habitable worlds, to see if they met the criteria for terraforming. But for the crew of the research cruiser USSC Viking, CR-13, their primary goal was to make new friends, specifically alien ones. They were always listening for unusual radio signals, looking for strange objects that could prove to be an alien space vessel, and even broadcasting their existence into the unknown. To the dismay of Captain Orland, he did not encounter any of said friends until the late end of their mission. At this time, the Viking was starting to run low on fuel. After exploring this unnamed system, they'd have to return to base. Thankfully, his luck finally pulled through when they observed unusual readings on an object about 0.6 AU from the local star. It was between a hot Jupiter and a rocky planet barren of life, which was interesting, since it meant that the object likely hadn't been there for very long, in a stellar timescale. This gave them all the more reason to approach, an act that would account for a few hours of boredom. When the aforementioned time had passed, they had managed to acquire a better visual of the vessel. What they found appeared to be in a dormant state. Nonetheless, it still featured all the characteristics a spacecraft needed. It had propulsion devices, sensors, and even a sturdy design. Most importantly, this alien spacecraft had an airlock, which revealed that it was orientated perpendicularly to the thrusters. The Viking was much different in design, having the modern arrowhead or pine tree silhouette. Its sloped hulls were somewhat similar to the fantastical Star Destroyers, though their service decks were aligned in a completely different manner. Instead of the top of the ship being located above the thrusters, it was located at the front. This allowed the creation of artificial gravity through acceleration, at the expense of constantly burning at 9.8 ms squared. The only real issue that came with this was the fact that you needed to look up at your enemy if you wanted to shoot them with the spinal guns, and this was solved using cameras. These same cameras observed the alien vessel leave its dormant state and adjust its orbit towards a rendezvous with the Vikings. An unusual act, but one easily dismissed if they wanted to peacefully meet. With the limited knowledge available to him, Orland decided that it would be best to shut down the Vikings' thrusters and remain in an easily interceptable orbit. Now all the crew and him would need to do was wait for the aliens, or whatever they were, to drift their way. After 4 hours, the alien vessel had finally made it within a kilometre of the Viking. It was the closest he would allow the vessel to approach, though it was positively dwarfed by both Vikings' armament and size. It was a mere 100 metres in length, compared to the 800 metres of the Viking. And by modern standards, the Viking wasn't even that large of a spacecraft. The larger destroyers encroached upon its size, while the newer battlecruisers were nearly 1.5 times the length. Captain Orland was in an advantageous position, so he was not worried about any hostile intentions. However, he still thought it would be wise to prepare for the worst by doubling down on the Space Force's battle-ready first contact policy. "All crew report to battle stations," Orland commanded. In an instant, the Vikings' crew rushed to their positions, the scientists hopping in their flight seats, and the officers making their way towards the bridge. Everyone was here. Now it was time for Orland to begin his somewhat cautionary speech. It was a momentaneous occasion, after all. "Captain Orland here, as you are all aware. We have encountered an alien spacecraft of unknown origins and intent. While I hope that first contact will go as planned, I am obligated to warn all of you, my fellow patriots and humans, that there is a possibility that hostile actions will ensue, and it is our duty to protect our country and the rest of our species from said alien threat if they mean to provoke conflict." With that, they began the first contact procedure. It all started with a drone ship which had just left the Vikings' hangar. It had been previously decontaminated, along with the shuttle. He had thought of sending a manned ship instead, but Orland wasn't risking his crew's life for any poorly thought sentiments. He had decided that it would be best not to stray from doctrine, for the sake of his neck, and that whoever dared to represent humanity. Switching his attention to that of the screen in front of him, Orland cautiously observed the drone ship's cameras as it made its final approach. Thump. The drone ship had made contact, latching onto the hull around the alien spacecraft's airlock. From there and on, it would proceed to seal the area between the airlock and the drone ship's interior. Inside, there was a sensor package and a remotely piloted gift for the aliens. Both had been hardened and weatherproofed so that their Xeno counterparts could open the airlock and expose their atmosphere to the drone ship. After a successful seal was made, the airlock opened, filling the area around the sensor package with a light atmosphere similar to that of Titan's. A drone was released next, as it would allow further access to the alien spacecraft. It was meant to be studied by alien scientists, so it had all the tools necessary to help them begin rudimentary translations. How it would be used by the aliens was unknown to him. He just hoped that it wouldn't be trashed by a group of alien junkers. The drone headed deeper into the alien vessel, the airlock doors opening before it. It was pitch black on the visual spectrum, though a much more unusual sight was being picked up on the infrared. Instead of continuing like any other normal hallway, it stopped a few meters in front of the drone. After a closer inspection, the blockage appeared to be some type of mass that was warmer than the ship around it. Eager to continue with the mission, the pilot moved the drone even closer. Unable to do much more, the pilot turned on his comms and asked, "Permission to take a sample, Captain?" "Affirmative." The drone extended a small arm, intended to take a sample from the mass. It appeared to be biological, though utterly alien compared to what many people would even describe as an alien. The aforementioned creature made no reaction when the drone pricked it. Within a few seconds they had a model of its tissue. It was completely bizarre, yet not of current importance. After a delayed reaction, the mass had lunged forward and completely engulfed the drone. It was Vor. Alien Vor. They lost connection minutes later, though the cameras had been quickly damaged beyond use. This most recent event had unsettled his crew. A few had laughed nervously at the mention of Vor by another crewmate. Others were a bit disgusted or surprised, many having the "what the fuck just happened" look on their faces. It was puzzling for sure, but also a tad worrying for Orland. With this strange move fresh in his mind, he decided to give the order for the drone ship to return. This order was carried out without issue, so the Viking remained in place, sensors open, waiting for any attempt at communication by light or even radio. But no attempt was made, at least not before the alien spacecraft began slowly accelerating towards them. To prevent collision, they matched the vessel's acceleration, keeping it at a safe distance. But Orland knew that probably would last for long, so he directed the ship to start maneuvering away in a perpendicular direction from the alien. From what he had seen earlier, he thought that the alien would most likely lash out in some way, deploying some type of weapon system. Instead, the alien accelerated, taking chase and aiming towards the side of the Viking. This prompted the Viking and her crew to accelerate to 1G, 2Gs, and counting. Soon they started reaching the limits of human endurance, pulling up towards 9, 15, and 20. This was held for a few seconds, but the human body couldn't stand it for much longer. By now he had already realized that he could not run away from the alien vessel. The alien's G tolerance was much higher than theirs, and it was approaching rapidly. Slowing the Viking down, he did his best to reduce the damage he would sustain. Orland could hear the screeching of metal as the alien vessel collided with their own. In that moment, there was a time of stillness, a time of realization that they had just been rammed by an alien. This was passed quickly as the crew came back to their senses. Luckily, the only serious damage had been inflicted on the right flank and the missile pods present there. Everything else was fine, though Orland could see other problems developing in the future. In fact, they had been pretty fortunate. None of the missiles had exploded in the Viking, instead being ejected far from his ship. They'd be useful later. Taking the initiative, Captain Orland barked, "Let's throw the fucker off! Start rolling!" They spun and spun, but to no avail, as the alien vessel was lashed on tight. After a few more tries, Orland resigned from the effort. They need to place explosive charges to destroy the area around the alien vessel. Only then would the Viking be from his hold. Reports that a foreign mass was moving around the impact zone also warranted the need to deploy a security response team. They need to fight the thing off, hopefully pushing it back onto its own ship. This time, Captain Orland was anxiously watching the helmet cam of the security response team's leader. There were 9 members, most out of frame, and a room-clearing unit which was leading the way with its tank-like treads. The RCU was a knee-high robot designed to kill everything in a room before they could react, being armed with twin 10mm bolt-cast automatic railguns, a breaching device, and laser dazzlers. It was an essential part of the plan. Without such an effective suppressing device, they would have a hard time scaring the horror away. With the whoosh of escaping air, the bulkhead was opened by the security response team. It revealed a strange sight which prompted the team to halt. Having spotted the mass about 15 meters away, the team leader pointed his flashlight at it, exposing the soft, spongy yellow flesh to the harsh blue light. The creature moved forward, swallowing the space in the hallway as if it could sense the light on its exterior. With that, the team leader started shooting at the horror. Orlan could only imagine the brrr sound that the RCU was supposed to make, since it was in a vacuum, but the bullets were effective enough. As it retreated, the deadly flight of metal chasing it as it disappeared into the impact wreckage. The response team began to advance, pursuing their foe. A cocky move, but a necessary one at the same time. They probably thought they could push it farther, maybe into its own ship. As they further approached the open void of space, the team leader wised up and signaled for his squad to stop again. "Permission to retreat?" he asked Orland. "Can you clarify?" The bot pushes up and the rest of the team takes cover behind the closet door and provides supporting fire. "Go for it." He didn't want to resign any of his personnel to a fate of infinite war, especially since all they needed to do was entertain the creature so it didn't start meddling around with the doors before the charges were set. Once the team retreated behind the open door, the bot began moving out into the open. He got a good amount of shots off, but was sadly slammed into the side of the wall when the space blob thrust itself into the passageways once more. It was advancing rapidly now, taking fire from the security team as their leader cried, "Close the door! Close the damn door!" The door slid down, one of the response team members lobbing a grenade to the other side. It was good timing as well. The rest of the charges had been prepared. After forwarding the news, the security response team retreated to a safe place and secured themselves. He could see the sheer horror in some of their eyes. Today, they had definitely been through something else. The charges exploded simultaneously, rocking the hull of the Viking as they pulled away from the debris. Once they were clear, the Viking accelerated forward and turned around, leveling its twin spinal guns at the alien spacecraft. The sound of the ERAAP guns firing boomed throughout the spacecraft, giving way to a chorus of excited cheers. They had successfully shredded the engines on the alien ship. Turning around, the Viking thrust away even further from the wreckage. Now that they were far enough away, the missiles came to life, burning bright blue into the alien vessel and exploding. Satisfied with his work, Captain Orland leaned back and let loose a sigh of relief. It was over. The alien had been disposed of, leaving Orland with some time for himself. Maybe he'd finally get some sleep. He could do the paperwork later, once the crew were finished scanning the debris. Furthermore, he'd also have to file for repairs, write an incident report about their new friend, and oh god, it's almost as if the bureaucracy never ends. On that note, Orland dismissed himself. It'd be better to start the paperwork now.